them to help us do a lot. We didn't have any chairs in the house. I used to eat off the milk boxes.
Yeah.
My mother used to, grandmother, my mother died when I was 2.
All right, so if you move
My
those
grandmother
things
used to
there,
wake me
just
up
have
about
some-
I come from East
5
New York.
o'clock. Oh, no kidding, yeah. I'm
Right,
familiar with that, right?
right next door.
Yeah, that's right.
Okay, hang on. All right, everybody settle. Okay.
Do you want to mic me? Oh, you did already. Mic on.
Yeah, so please be careful not to hit your
I
head.
didn't even notice you'd mic me. How about that?
What can
It's
I
like,
tell you?
it's like a doctor taking blood. You don't even notice it.
Right. Yeah.
Okay, I am. Okay, Larry, so you're just going to look at him and it's a conversation with him.
Okay.
Do you want to start with him identify himself, or?
Hold on just a second. I got to see something about this is reflecting on your
On
glasses.
glasses, yeah. I always had that problem.
Okay, look at him, straight at him.
Okay.
That's hard. You know? Hard thing about TV is you have to
Right.
keep looking at somebody. You
Right.
can't say anything, and it just looks totally strange. Like,
Okay, it's all right.
Okay.
All right, go ahead.
we're good to go?
Yeah, you can ask him to identify himself.
Okay.
Tell us your name, rank, serial number.
The bank serial number. Lawrence White, everybody calls me Larry White. I'm known as Larry White. I work for the American Friends Service Committee. I served 32 years in prison.
What got you into prison in the first place?
An armored truck robbery on 42nd Street, Amsterdam Theater. This goes back to the early 70s, I believe that was. Yeah. And it was a shootout. Both the guards got shot and killed. Yeah. And there was 5 of us, 1 woman and 4 guys. And we got caught and I got sentenced to life in prison. Yeah, 25 years to life.
I'm sorry, can you just repeat that again? What he asked you what got you into prison. Can you say that again, please?
Robbery of an armored truck. It was a robbery, pretty well-known robbery. It was at the Amsterdam Theater on 42nd Street. This was back in the early 70s, I can't even recall now. And it was this big shootout. Early in the morning, an armored truck came. And we had came to the movie and stayed overnight. So when the armored truck came, we were already inside. And the shootout ensued. And we were caught. Got a life sentence. Yeah, 25-year life sentence.
It wasn't the first time you got in trouble with the law, though.
No. I've got an extensive history, both as a juvenile, as an adolescent, and as an adult.
So you were heading down the road towards trouble. You knew that.
Sure. This was on its way coming.
So you don't have any quarrel with the sentence, with the fact that you were caught, punished, and you went to prison?
During the years that I was involved in robbery or stick-ups, as you say, I never had an opportunity to shoot anybody. You know, most of the things we did were pretty well planned. This was the first time that we really had an accident when a shootout really occurred, and nothing went according to plan.
Never does.
No, yeah. And it had a long-lasting effect on me. You know, I used to have nightmares about this. It's the first time I saw people get shot. You know, you watch motion pictures and all that, you know. But this is the first time I saw it in real life, in real time, you know. And
when you got a sentence of 25 to life, you spent 32 years in prison from the age of, how old were you when you got in?
I was 32 when I got that sentence, I think. 32, yeah.
How do you survive 32 years of prison?
And let's hear him say I was in prison for 32 years.
Yeah, I was in prison for 32 years, you know. And that's a primary question. Most people think that when you go to prison, especially people serving long-term sentences, the whole concern is getting out, the immediate concern. That's not true. The immediate concern is how am I going to survive what I call the rigors of prevailing prison conditions, because prison conditions are very harsh. Making that transition from the free world to the closed world of the community And no one tells you this. I mean, I had to sit down and go through this myself, you know. The first thing that happens is that the shattering effect that it has on you, your relationships with people, you know, all the dreams that you had, whatever you were struggling toward, whatever condition in life you was in, there's always a struggle of trying to, you know. All of those things are over, they're shattered. And you have to adjust yourself now to, your life is going to be according to somebody's plan. You're told what to do, when to do it, all the time, you know. And making that adjustment is hard. I call that the resocialization phase of incarceration when you first go in for the novice person, just going in, making that adjustment to prison. It's very difficult because, you know, you don't have anybody who's going to give you any kind of guidance. When you go to prison and they give you a sentence, you know, people have to really look at, most people look at the sentence in terms of time and the time boundaries, you know. But it's not just time boundaries. I mean, what are you going to do during that time? Whether it's what they call small sentences, 5 years, 7 years, 10 years, or those long-term sentences, which are 15 years or more before you're eligible for parole.
It must have felt like a life sentence to you anyway, 25 years.
The first thing I
Can you
had...
hold on just a second? I'm so sorry. Just hold the thought. You're about to answer. Don't not answer. This looks all junky and messy. Sorry.
That must have felt like a life sentence anyway.
The
even if
first
it's
thing
just
I had
25
to
years.
ask myself was 25 years to life. I mean, like, state governments have master plans, and they're not that long. You know, how do you plan for doing 25 years to life? And that's where my studies really began. That's how I really got involved in all this. So I used to sit down, and I used to, you know, I had trouble sleeping anyway. So I would walk back and forth between the sink and the bars, you know, 5 steps this way, 5 steps backward. I'd walk miles.
Describe a little bit of where you went. What was your... Right, okay.
Sorry, can you say that last thing again about 5 steps forward and back?
Oh, I used to spend a lot of time thinking in the cell. And I would do it mostly at night when everybody was asleep. It was real quiet, you know. And I'd walk back and forth, you know, it's a really small cell, 8 by 16, 8 by 12, 5 steps from the sink to the bars, 5, 6 steps back, forth. I'd walk miles, you know. And thinking about my condition and you know, what I was going to do for 25 years. I mean, how did I break that? I had to do 25 years before I became eligible for parole. Well, how do you break 25 years down where it's how do I break it down into manageable proportions? You know? And I thought I can break it in half. 12 years, 12 and a half years, then to another 12 and a half years. I do 8 1/3, 4 8 1/3 periods. I had to break it down into periods. To think about the whole thing at once was so awesome. There was no way I could grip, you know, I could come to terms with it. So I finally wound up breaking it down into 5-year periods. The first 5 years I would adjust, the second 5 years, you know. And then closer I would come to going to the parole board for release. And I could manage that. I had that kind of discipline. For some people, there'd be 3 years, 8 3-year periods and stuff, you know. And so I began to write all this down. And over time, I had developed a manual. I didn't realize I had developed a manual, you know. And by then, I was organizing in the prison, especially people who had long periods of time.
Were you bitter when you got in?
It wasn't so much bitter. I had really begun to realize that I had wasted my life. During the course of this crime, let me give you some background on it. It's a big theater. We're there early in the morning. We had a woman we had put, as the workers came to work, we would handcuff and put them downstairs. We had a woman was with us involved in the robbery. We put her in the ticket booth to sell tickets, just in case the movie had to open up before the armored truck come. The armored truck was supposed to come at least an hour and a half before the movie opened up. One person was downstairs. Everybody was handcuffed when they came to work. We handcuffed and put them downstairs, sit on the bench. The two of us were inside. And you know, in the movie, it's dark, and they got the red running lights along the what's in there. And we had walkie-talkies. And so the woman in the booth said, "Listen, the truck just pulled up." So two of them was getting off. They got a wagon. They pulled in for the money and stuff. Yeah. We said, "Okay." So one person on this side of the door, another person on that side of the door, and one person facing them. I was facing them, you know. So when they came in, we told them, we said, "Listen, don't raise the shotguns." Both of them had shotguns, you know. But when you come in, it's a bright August day. So when you come inside and the door's closed, it's dark. They couldn't see, and they reacted immediately. Rose, you know, when they raised the shotguns up, they opened fire on them with this shotgun, and they were shot, both of them. And oh man, you know, like I said, it's the first time I seen it, the hollering and the screaming, the rolling on the ground and all that kind of stuff. Really messed me up bad. And so, like I say, it stayed on my mind for about 3 or 4 years after that. I got caught, got convicted, went to the reception center. You go to the reception center when they first come in, you know, and they have a sally port where the bus drives up with everybody on it, and they come out and they tell you the rules and the regulations and all that. And it's at a place where they're going to orientation, where the state's going to orientate you, and they're going to figure out, you know, what level of security, what prison would they be sending you to. And because I had, you know, a life sentence, 25 years of life, I was going to go to one of the maximum security prisons, you know. And I'd gotten the habit, I think I said I had trouble sleeping at night. And it had reached a point where I would walk back and forth, and I would talk to the two guys that died. I knew their names. I read all the newspapers about them and stuff, you know, trying to explain that it wasn't really my intention that anybody should die in this, you know. So as time went by, you know, I began to look at my condition, and like I said, I used to write, take notes. You know, how I was going to do the 25 years, how you break it down. And I developed a thing called mapping for long-term prisoners. And mapping was, how do you break your sentence down into manageable proportions? That's the first thing.
So here's a question I want to ask you. So you went into prison. You did a crime. You did a time alone. But you go into a prison which is a community of people. Do you still see yourself as part of the community, or how long does it take you to suddenly say, "I am part of this community imprisoned inside," or do you stay locked up in yourself? I mean, what happens to a person
It is a
who gets in
community.
that
You really
situation?
see it when you go out to the yard, to the big yard where everybody goes out. You know, they have 3 module time periods in their prison. The morning module, afternoon module, and then the evening module is when you go to kind of programs that you want to involve, or you just go out into the yard, you know. And the yard is broken down into, I used to call it a class system. Depending on where you come from, what part of the state you came from, kind of crime you committed, the level of your involvement in the street as a hustler, and, you know, a criminal and all. So there were certain sections of the yard that you went to. So when you first go out, you don't know, you know, you just come in there new. And the people that you know, they say, "Oh, we're over here." You come over here. And the people who were sticking up and the kind of stick-ups I was doing and stuff had a certain part of the yard. That's where you went to, you know.
What surprised you most when you got in?
Well, this was my first time in doing this kind of time and going to a maximum security prison. Before I had been to reformatories. This is the first time I found myself in a maximum security prison. And like I said, when you go to the reception center, you pull up what they call it the sally port, where the buses drive, and everybody gets out. You're handcuffed and you're shackled, you know. And watch commander, senior guard that's on duty, he has his white shirt and balls. He comes out, he tells you, and he runs the deal down. You know, he says rules and regulations. You know, and you conform, or you can rebel, You know, if you rebel, we would beat that ass. And just let it out to you that way. You know?
Were you angry?
Not so much angry as being shocked. They would say that to your face, you know. But then everybody's handcuffed and shackled. What can you do, you know? And as I said, I had been to adolescent reformatories before, so I was more or less prepared for this. But there were people, the guys I was shackled to this first time in prison, he was dumbfounded, I mean, struck, you know. Yeah.
What was the thing that most surprised you when you got in? You were saying that you saw so
There
many
was
people
no guidance, there was no direction. You know, you would figure, you know, when you went to reformatory, when you first went to reformatory, you were given a counselor, and programs was laid out for you. You know, during the period that you're going back and forth to court, they do a probation report, which the sentence is based on. They look at your family background, your education, you know, your employment skills, your lifestyle, and all these things are documented. You know, you can get a copy of that as you're getting ready to be sentenced and see what people say about you and stuff. Look at your whole life and all that, you know. And so when you went to the reformatory, you know, you went to a counselor. The counselor had the big record with all your records, and they tell you, you know, we searched it, you know, all about your schooling and all that, you know. And they gave you a program. You know, you didn't have no. I didn't graduate. I hadn't even graduated from high school. You got to go to school. If you don't have a 5th grade education, you must go to school. So there's a program for you, you know. And reformatory time was not really heavy time. But now I'm in the max. I'm saying from the life sentence. I could do 25 years before you figured that they would have a program laid out for what you're going to do. That's not the case at all. And eventually I found myself that I was writing the programs. The state used to come to me and send guys to me and let me set up the program for the Lifers program. I wrote programs for Lifers and what they call sentence planning. I wrote that first one. The first one I wrote was mapping for long-term prisoners, manuals and stuff. And so, you know.
Prison is supposed to be a rehabilitation place, not just an instrument of punishment.
That's what I'm talking about. You know, I mean, when people use that term, you know, I really begin to wonder if they really knew. Because I remember when I first started the program and stuff, the rehabilitation center, rehabilitation for the person who's serving time means to say we'll give you a trading ability that will give you the opportunities to go outside and become a member of the workforce. You know, work, save you money, you know, buy a house out in Long Island, have a car and a dog named Spot, and the whole American dream. That's what they say. I mean, that's the understanding of it, if it's not spelled out that way. You know, and you know, and then the person, as soon as you finish the sentence, it's all over. That part's over. I go out and start afresh and, you know, start climbing those steps up toward the American dream. Like I said, you know, I'm rehabilitated. Maybe I can get a job. I got some skills or academic training that would allow me to save my money and do that. Collateral consequences. That enters. Everywhere you go, you got to check that box, you know, for social services, even to go to college, much less apply for a job or for housing.
But
You ever see the Shawshank Redemption?
yes,
Ah, do you remember the guy that went home, the first guy that went home, the white guy, he did 40 years? And he was writing back, he got the job in the supermarket, and then he got the little room, you know, housing. So employment and housing, two major concerns. He got those, and everybody said, oh, he's on his way. And next month he committed suicide. And then the guy, what's the guy's name, the actor?
oh, Tom Hanks.
No, the other, the black guy.
Freeman, Morgan Freeman.
Morgan Freeman went out, and he got the job, but it showed you when he first came into the job, you know. And he said, yes, boss. And the guy used to tell him, say, listen, I'm a manager. You're not in prison anymore. Don't call me boss like that in front of people. You know what I mean? So making that adjustment.
But in order to survive for 25 years, you've got to believe that at the end of it, there's a light, that you can actually go back to becoming a normal person again.
If no
Is that
one
realistic?
tells you if no one tells you, you're under the impression that it, you know, even on parole, and you can understand parole is a tag, they have a leash on you know. But if you had completed your whole sentence, you think that it's all over. You know, I served it, you know. I mean, you know, I did the time, I did the punishment and all that, now I can start afresh. All that's behind me. That's not what collateral consequences. That's the big thing today. It's never over, not in the United States. Our system of justice doesn't play that. You know, that's going to be with you forever. It's sustained, you know.
Did you notice conditions changing or improving? You were in such a long time over different periods of how
We,
the country punished people. 40 years ago, got really, really tough, and prisons became just places of punishment. Did you see any conditions improving, or did they just get worse? What was it like over the years?
when we talk about improvement in conditions, we're talking about the brutality that exists in prison. We're not talking about the underlying beliefs about punishment. I mean, you know, especially now, a mirror is being held to us by the Europeans, by the Norwegians and the Netherlands. You know, they take a look. You know, you're way behind. You're we're way behind. I mean, we
But
don't
take
seem to realize how deeply ingrained punishment runs through this, not just the criminal justice system. You see it with our children, even with our infants. When we admonish our infants, we just don't tell them, don't do this. That smack must occur. Don't. It must be there. If it doesn't occur, then admonishment is not going to have its proper effect. So punishment is really believed. I tried to do some research, and I had made a couple of errors in my research. But I had gotten an understanding that the Academy of Sciences had made a statement, and my interpretation was that punishment was the least effective way, but it wasn't stated that way. We think that punishment actually solves problems. It has more to do with solving problems than to do with behavior. It may have an effect on the behavior, but it's the least effective way to solve a problem. But this country believes in that, and our senses are based on that, you know. And it's reached the point that, like I said, people go to college. I know a guy just come home a couple of years ago. A good friend of mine was involved in the movement with me, you know. 4 college degrees, 2 masters, you know.
which you got in prison.
He's almost double his minimum term, even with the degrees, you know. And so you begin to wonder, the people who are supposed to reckon whether you're ready to be released or not, whether you can remain at liberty without breaking the law, you know, and whether you've really improved your condition. Now, here's a guy came to prison, didn't have a high school diploma. He got 2 master's degrees. And every time he would go to parole board, they would hit him with 2 years, denying parole, you know. So you begin to wonder after a period of time, and it reaches a period of time where people give up, you know. I don't know if the suicide rate is as great as it was when I first started going into the adolescence joint. They used to frighten me to death, you know, because I've seen guys jump off the top tier when I was in Elmira. But
Prison impacted you hugely, and as it would impact anybody who was in. But what was the impact on your family that you left behind? What did that mean for them?
I had a sister and a grandmother were the 2 mainstays. You know, my mother had died when I was a kid and all. And they had seen me go from, you know, juvenile to the adolescence to now to the max, you know. And there's no explanation you can give them for that, you know. So my ties with my family weren't very strong. They become very loose and tenuous over the period. My sister still came to see me and all, you know. But there was no way I could explain. I mean, they were surprised at the involvement in prison. When my name started ringing, it was in the papers and stuff, other things I was doing and stuff, you know. But I could never sit down and really explain to them what that entailed what was involved with all that. No. You know, in fact, the hardest thing for me is when I was released. You know, when I went to the parole board. You know, I had to. You get used to. I had gotten accustomed to it. I liked living in solitude, and going home was a problem because I knew I was not going to live at close quarters with people. You know, with my family. And I chose not to go live with my family. I chose to go to you know, and that blew a lot of people's minds, a lot of people in my family's minds, you know. But they didn't understand the living habits I had developed, living in the cell for 3 decades, you know.
You had a son.
Yeah, my son used to come see me, and then he would bring his children to come see me. Yeah.
And how did
That's all that
you
happened.
rework or revive your relationship with him? What was it like to
We're
come
just
back to his
now,
son? He was
I'll
6 years
be out
old when you went in?
I'll be out 7 years in August, and we're just beginning to bond. I have a closer ties to the people I left inside the prison system than with my son, to be truthful with you. You know, we're just now really beginning to bond. And he understood. I told him, I said, man, you know more about fatherhood than I do. You know, and I explained to him, and he knew the work I was doing inside the prison and stuff. You know, so.
He never got in trouble. He led a straight life. Your
Who,
son?
my son? Yeah, no, he's never been in prison. They was going to send him to jail for alimony. Him and his wife split up. Yeah, I had to pay that alimony for him. I didn't want him to spend a day in the county jail.
And you have a granddaughter.
And she just graduated from high school. I mean, from college. Yeah, Winston-Salem. She graduated.
Tell us a little bit about. You have a granddaughter.
And that's why I wanted to go back to Shawshank's Redemption. You know. When Freeman showed you when he got the job, when he went to stay in the same room that the guy had committed suicide, still had the noose hanging, and he was writing the guy back in prison. And he says, man, the hardest thing is making the social connections. There's no social connections. My wife died, my mother died, all my friends had died and moved away. That's the shattering effect that long-term imprisonment has on a person's life, you know. All the things are gone, the property we tried to save and everything is gone and shattered, you know. And then when you get outside, you lose that confidence. I can remember the day that they let me out the prison. For some reason, they let me out the back way instead of the front door. And I remember the steel door slamming behind me. And the guy was up the tower, and, you know, he said, see you later, see you later, Larry, you know. And I was standing there, and it dawned on me, I realized I knew everything that was happening back there. Everything, on all levels. But I had the slightest inclination of what was going to happen now that I was outside. And I was scared to death, you know. And I had somebody who was picking me up. I got released from Clinton, that's up near the Canadian border. And she came to pick me up. And I remember we were driving. And she asked me all, you know, the common questions people ask you about freedom and all that. And I gave her all the answers they expected. But inside, no, inside I said, I'm going to have a horrible time. And I did. I'm just now getting to the point where I can have these kind of conversations and feel confident about myself. It took me at least going on 3 years to be able to ride the public conveyances without having that complex that everybody's looking and that everybody knows, you know.
One of the things you just told me that was really interesting was that you were surprised when you got up to prison to see how many people you knew.
You know, a lot of our research started, the research that me and Eddie did was that when you come to prison, most of the people are not really strangers. If you don't know them, they come from the same neighborhood, you know. So we begin to study, and we just begin to look at the total population. We used to look at the total population, and we tried to break that down. Where were they coming from? Most people were coming from large urban areas. Over 75% was coming from New York City alone. And then we started doing research on, especially during election periods, we broke down to assembly districts and how many people were coming from those districts. And, you know, Eddie did all the research. I'm a conceptual guy. I would go to him and he would, you know. And so we started doing the research on that. They've mastered it now to $1 million blocks. But the whole concept came when we had the think tank. We started a think tank up at Greenhaven. We were doing that kind of research and work, yeah.
Bring it down personally, though. When you went in, were there a lot of people from your neighborhood who you saw?
Sure, I know a lot of people. There was no, you know, and the thing about it that really struck me was that you would see somebody that you haven't seen in 10 years, 15 years. You know, we would talk, yeah, tell me what's going on, man. What was you doing out there? And then after about a week, you know, they call me, they say, come here, I want to talk to you, man. He said, you changed. You're not the same guy. So you mean I changed? You know, he says, you ain't the guy on the street. You know, and then you begin to realize that changes have been happening so insidiously and inside that I wasn't aware of it. You know,
But let's go back to that point about people, you meeting people in prison who you knew in the neighborhood. What does that tell you about who's going to prison these days?
well, one thing was certain that we had clearly understood that there was a direct connection between communities of color and the prison system. I mean, you know, in New York State, we're a minority in New York State, but we're a majority in the prison system. And that struck us first, the demographics, when we started doing the demographics of the total prison population and the local prison populations and stuff, you know. The racism that played a role in it. You know, there was more than just the racism. The whole idea came down to, and this has happened, you know, in teaching the classes. Most people thought they were in prison for committing a crime, you know, and that's what, you know, I had to explain to them. I said, you know, the life that we live isn't in a vacuum, you know. You live in a world, and the world surrounds you, you know. It's like a ball. You throw the ball against the wall, and the wall throws that ball back to you, you know. Your environment impacts upon you and shapes, you know, your actions in the courses of your life and the things that you do. The political, economic, social, and environmental surroundings, they have an impact on you. I mean, you in the street, we're impervious to those things. We don't pay any attention. Wasn't paying any attention to that stuff. We wasn't going to school and all that, you know. The big beef was that there was people in the community we called so-called squares that was trying to improve the community. We out there hustlers, you know, trying to tear it down, you know. So to
So you,
explain to people that why they were really in jail and that their biggest obstacles when they get in jail was to get their full citizenship rights back. You know, that their life chances had been destroyed once you get a felony. You know, by life chances, I mean, what were the percentage, what were the chances of you moving up in society to achieving the American dream? Everybody wants to achieve the American dream. What are your chances of that? Get home and get a car, man, take care of my family and blah, blah, do that. You really believe that? I was telling them, that ain't happening. That's not the deal. And then they started the re-entry started coming into play. You know, people started getting that money for having these re-entry organizations and all, you know. And I
so
have a beef about that because re-entry and reintegration is not the same thing at all. Re-entry, when you first come home, addresses your survival needs: food, clothing, shelter, social services, you know. And the reentry organizations, they help you find a job and a place to stay. Then after that, that's it. But you're same position the guy in Shawshank Redemption. Once you have the job, then what? You know, how do you make new friends? You know, how do you, and most guys that was coming out of my programs, you know, they want to go to the community and help, you know, we involve ourselves in the life struggles of the community is how I used to tell them. Involve yourself with that. You know, we had a lot of organizations were coming into prison to see us and stuff, faith organizations and stuff, you know.
Larry, that's a point I want to just go back over again for a second. So over the time that you were in, over the 30 years or so, did you notice the prison conditions or programs changing for the better, or were they changing for the worse?
A lot of them
And
were,
how?
you know, what the prison movement was really about was that we were rebelling against the so-called rehabilitative processes, the programs that they had in place, didn't address our needs. They were cultural. When I say cultural, I mean I'm going back to a community, not where things are wide open, You know, there's always that idea of, you know, whenever I went to the store, you know, I was black and I know they were looking at me, you know, and I'm suspect, you know. So these are things you have to teach people that rehabilitation doesn't. So we begin to develop our own programs. You know, the whole idea of going to college, that came out of us. You know, so we developed a lot of different programs inside the prison system, academic programs, as well as, you know, one of the big changes I saw was the hip hop era. You know, when I first came to prison, the whole notion of trying to improve yourself to get an education, learn a trade and stuff like that, I wouldn't do that, you know. But then I began to notice that guys would come into my class and stuff, and these were guys who wanted, they thought that rehabilitation was for real. That rehabilitation was going to teach them to do the things that they wanted to do. And these guys came in, they wanted to be record producers, they wanted to be designers of clothes, and there was images that would point to who had done that successfully in the, you know, the hip hop world out there. They wasn't about it. Most of those guys had been to college and stuff, but they had made a success out of it. And they wanted to do that in prison. And they thought that the prison would help them, you know, give them the education to do that. They said, come on, man, drawings and stuff and all of that, you know. And I said, oh, man, you know. So I'd go to the administration and tell them, you know, the administration said, well, we don't teach it in prison, you know. So yes, I've seen changes. You know,
Did the administration?
the tragedy is that, and this has to do with my man's book. You know, I don't think things are really going to change dramatically. I don't think so.
Why?
I can't even foresee it. I can't. I don't.
Why not?
Prison is not something that stands alone in this country. It's connected to too many other things, and those things are not about to change. Because those things have to do with people's lifestyles, their money, and all the rest of that, you know. And things may improve, but they're not really change, not really. Do away with prisons, do away with all these people that we have in prisons, you know. Even now, on the federal level, the conservatives, oh, you know, mass incarceration, we're going to do something about that, you know. But that's because the money is involved. Their problem is the money. They ain't worried about the people. You know, we have a caste system in this country. Do you realize how many people have been convicted of a crime? Not just, I mean, when you look at the people who have served time, formerly incarcerated, is one thing. We're organizing now. But we begin to realize that there are many people who have those felonies who never did time. You can't leave them out of the equation. When I look at my community, the first thing in my community is, I wonder if the community really seems to realize it ain't like before. Like before, you know, I was a hustler out there in the street and a criminal, and the people who were the do-good people went to church and was working and all that. They were in the majority, you know. People with criminal records, formerly incarcerated, are becoming the majority, maybe even the predominant majority in our communities today, whether they realize it or not. You know.
What's the impact on those communities of that?
I think things are beginning to happen, especially out in the West Coast, more readily than here in New York, is that the formerly incarcerated are beginning to make their voices heard within the community and to talk to those people who used to be involved in the life struggles of the community now. They're beginning to raise their voices, you know. One of the big things that really is holding a lot of formerly incarcerated people back is the right to vote. The vote is that's the power. We need to get that power. We need to vote. We need to form a voting bloc, you know. But these are the ideas and concepts that are being thrown out here now.
Let's go back to the prison situation for a second.
You have 1 minute left.
Okay.
I'm telling Steve, if you
Okay.
want to go a little bit longer, you can, but I'm just letting
Okay.
you know we're at 30. We are now at 40 minutes.
Okay, talk a little bit about the racism of the prison system. Did you encounter it? Did it change?
There are certain prisons, you know, the others hide it or cover it. Places like Comstock, Attica, you know, Tell you to your face, nigga. You know, they don't, you know, so it may not be as bad as it has been, you know, but the things you see in prison, I've seen them beat guys to death. You know, you be in your cell and you hear the troopers come. These are the guys with the black gloves and their back hanging out their back pocket, the beat up crew. So they holler down there, hit cell 23. And y'all go in there and you hear them beating and the guy screaming, and then it gets quiet. And you hear him whispering, the door closed and they leave. You holler downstairs, hey, so-and-so, yeah, put your mirror over there and see what's happening with him. Say, he dead, man. Say, he on the ground, you know. Say, he ain't answering, you know. So you see a lot of them kind of things happening, you know.
Were you beaten? Were you beaten?
I was smacked around a while. I spent time in solitary confinement, and that in itself is scary, scary. Solitary confinement is, you know, I've read a lot that people who have been in solitary confinement have said about it. The thing that's most scary to me is that we hold conversations with people all the time. And we think that those conversations are just passe things that we tell each other our interests and blah, blah, and we don't understand the importance of these things. They put you in solitary confinement. They put you in a tank. Tank means that there's no cell on either side of you. It's just your cell and there's a window that keep the window open. The birds used to come up on the window. I used to save my bread early in the morning, throw it to the bird, you know. There's nothing in the cell. They give you a mattress 6 o'clock at night. Otherwise, there's nothing in the cell but the toilet bowl and the sink. And the writings on the wall. You read all the writings in the wall. And time goes by, you know. And the thing that scared me and frightened me the most, I think I said, something so happened the day before yesterday. Didn't it happen yesterday? And there's nobody to confirm it. There's nobody to confirm any of that. And you begin to wonder, did it really happen at all? You know? And I said, man, I'm about to lose my mind. You know? And that's the most dangerous thing it's about solitary. There's nobody to confirm your experience.
I have one last big question, if I can. Huge numbers of prisoners, people inside, are older these days.
That's true.
We were talking about that. Tell us a little bit about. I mean, what did you see? Did you see in
the aging problem really stems from two things. First of all, we give out much too long a sentence. You know, Norway's the big one, told us big one on that. You know, it doesn't take that long. It takes 25 years to change a person's behavior. 25 years. It takes 25 years to change my behavior. Don't take that. I mean, common sense. Yeah. So people grow old, and they know they're going to get old. And the frightening thing is not that when I go home, will I survive this at all? You know, I won't go to I'll be 60 when I go to the parole board. Can I live that long? What will happen during that interim period? How can I guarantee that I'll live that long? And then when I reach that long, you know, I look at all of my peers who have lived that long going to parole board. They ain't going home. They're being denied 3, 4, 5 times. You know, there's guys in there 70 years old and stuff, you know. So,
you saw a lot of people who were over 50 when you were just
there are guys, I'll probably be going back in September. I get hundreds of letters all the time. I told them I'll be back, you know. And there are guys, you know, I can see it in their writing, you know, that are bad shape, bad shape. One of them got 72 years old, you know. And this guy was in his 20s when he went to prison, man. The recent guy, I ain't gonna call his name out. He had 48 years in prison. He got sick. They have a prison. You know, they have nursing homes and prisons, you know. They said they have a terminal prison called Walsh Memorial. You won't see it listed. When you go to Walsh Memorial, that's it. There ain't no coming out of there. That's the end of that. That's terminal. And they had sent him there. And he wrote the parole board. They have a thing called compassionate release. for the release of elderly and medically, you know, people. It's very, very, very rare. And they gave that to this guy. And nobody could find, I called everybody, nobody could find a nursing home for this guy to come home to. They gave him an open date for April. Couldn't find a place for this guy. So the guy's gonna die, he ain't gonna make the year. He not gonna live the year out, you know, and stuff. So, till the day I don't know if he got out or not, you know. So,
Okay.
man, situation.
Thank you, Larry.
Okay, let's,
Okay.
hang on, don't get up, don't get up. Just sit still and everybody sit still. And, you know, stay engaged here.
Sure.
Looking at him.
I kept thinking of more questions I want to ask you.
That's okay.
Well,
Why
I'm
don't
ready
you
to
ask
go
them?
back. I'm ready to go back now. There's so many things I want to do. One of the first things I did when I came outside was, you know, this whole thing about reentry. You hear so great
Yeah.
deal about reentry. Like I say, reentry deals with your subsistent needs. But after that, when you go back to the community, how do I situate myself where I am accepted into the community, where I can involve myself? What Todd Clare calls social capital. How do I develop social capital? You know, I didn't realize what that meant. We hang out and cruising with groups of people, and it's those groups of people that keep you on the straight and narrow. Now I'm coming. I want to involve myself with a group. That's not going to be about getting high and stealing and how do I meet that kind of group? How do I involve myself in that? He called that. He had the name for it. I can't remember. It was social capital and efficacy. Social efficacy. I think they were naming it. That's joining those social groups or social movements that are about improving conditions. And your involvement in that keeps you on the straight and narrow, and it stops you from recidivism. That's what stops recidivism. You know, social capital and
When
know
did
that.
you start feeling, when you were inside, that there was actually light at the end of the tunnel, that you might actually be able to survive this?
Well, I stopped eating in the mess hall. You know, I had gotten cancer in there, and I don't even want to talk about that. You know, it cost me a great deal. So I stopped. You know, I used to have in the prison I was in. They used to have gardens. They have courts. You own property in this prison, Clinton prison. Had a little square court with a table and a stove. You know, you could cook and stuff. You know, and I used to grow carrots and broccoli and all that kind of stuff. You know, so I started watching my eating, and they wasn't doing anything for my cancer. They sent me outside to the regional hospital, and the guy told me, so you got to stop all that. You know, you got to watch how you live. He says, but I can tell you now, you're facing a major problem. It'll happen either here or if you live to go in the street. And man, it had gotten so bad that when I came home, I had to go to Sloan Kettering. I called Sloan Kettering. They asked me about insurance. I didn't have any insurance. So we can't take, you know. So well, by the way, what is the case? And when I told them, they said, oh, come down, we'll do that. And I came down, you know, and it cost me dearly, man. There was a time when I was really thinking about ending my life out here, you know. Very bad situation.
Okay.
Okay.
Okay, can we just have some quiet and if you feel just like, you can look anywhere you want. Just
Yeah.
relax, quiet for a second.
Yeah. Sure.